Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. We've got a great one for you, if I say so myself, today, because we are sharing something that we have been sharing with outplacement clients. We have been sharing it with job search clients for years, and we realized that we haven't actually made a podcast episode. So this is what to expect at different interview stages. And we're going to look at, if you are going into job search mode as a candidate, what might you expect at the different stages and how can you best prepare? Pam, we can't believe that we haven't actually made this episode before, can we?
No, it's like, how many episodes in are we? Like 100 plus. And we were like, are we sure we've not done this episode? And we're like, no, we haven't. So I'm excited about this one because I always think back to interview prep, don't I? And this is all about interview prep or the different interview stages, but essentially the stages that you're prepping for.
Yeah. And when we simplify this, we came across a friend of mine is an executive headhunter, and it was her that first said it to me, that throughout the course of a recruitment process as a candidate, there are three things that organization needs to know. And they are answering the questions for themselves of, who are you? Can you do the job? Are you one of us? And I think when you simplify it like that, it really helps to get into your head what they might want from you as a candidate at different stages. So, Pam, let's start with initial screenings. So this is your CV has landed. They want to have an initial short conversation with you. What can candidates expect at that stage?
So at the very first stage, and I think when we talk about this in the outplacement workshops that we do, I think the key aspect of this is us providing that understanding from both the candidate and the recruiter perspective, so that the candidate is more prepared because they know what the recruiter is expecting. So I think in terms of the initial screening stage, obviously from the recruiter perspective, it's like, this person looks decent on paper, let's have a chat with them. From the candidate side of things, it's they're looking to find out who you are. They want to know a bit more about what you can bring and generally want you to talk through your skills and experience. And I suppose on the back of that, the most common question, the one everyone hates, is tell me about yourself, isn't it? That is usually the question that people will ask in those screening interviews. Tell us a bit about yourself. And they might ask you things about, like, why are you interested in this role? They might even ask you about salary expectations. It just depends. And they might ask you a few interview questions. And the whole point of that screening interview is to get a real feel for you. Now, what we find a lot is that screening interview isn't the hiring manager. So that screening interview could be the recruiter, and this could be the agency recruiter. It could be the internal recruiter. It could be a HR person. It could be somebody else from the team, somebody who has taken responsibility to speak to all of the candidates that they think look decent on paper to see if they have actually got what it takes. And they'll usually have a set number of questions that they'll ask everyone, and then they'll usually score it and pass it on to the hiring manager. If the hiring manager does the initial screening, then that's even better, because you can see if you've got that connection with them, you can start building rapport. But I'd say probably 8 times out of 10, it's not going to be the hiring manager that is going to do that screening interview. So it's more important than ever to go into that process being fully prepared with what you can do, what you can bring, what you've delivered, and how you align with their company. Like, that initial screener is probably one of the most important parts, because if the hiring manager isn't the person interviewing and they can't probe and ask more questions, then the chances are you'll be rejected from that process because you haven't given enough information about how you align with that company or with that role.
It's a really interesting stage, isn't it, this? Because this stage of recruitment, from a recruiter perspective, is very much about the who are you stage. It's the, like you say, it's the you look good on paper. Is that how you actually come across when I speak to you? It's that question of, are you the right person for me to put in front of the hiring manager? And I think the other questions to prepare yourself for at this stage. So definitely anticipate that question of tell me a bit about yourself and be able to articulate your experience in a really succinct and clear way that's specific to that role. But also, you can sometimes find at this stage that you might get a question about the company values, for example. You might get asked that question of, why do you want this role? Why are you making a move? You can also anticipate that if there are really clear competency aspects of this role, you might get one or two competency questions. It's quite straightforward, I would say, for people when they understand what the purpose is to be able to prepare well. And I think I'd be really interested in your view on this. We normally agree on things, but maybe we'll find one day something that we don't. But I think the big mistake that candidates often make with this is they don't think of it as a formal stage. And so they go in without feeling like there's any preparation that they can or should do, when in reality, you can anticipate fairly reliably what might well come up, and you can prepare really well for this. And that will allow you to be memorable and to really showcase who you are in a way that makes it much more likely that you're going to be put in front of that hiring manager.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't know what is going to happen when we get to the point where we don't agree on something.
Let's just stop the podcast.
We literally have to just abandon the podcast and have a chat about it. But no, I completely agree with that. And I'd even take it one stage further or rewind a little bit more and say that preparation should really start at the point of application, because when you are putting your application together, when you're thinking about if you've got the right information on your CV, that's where you should be thinking about, how do I align with this company? What are they all about? What would they need from me? And at that point, that's where your interview prep is going to start. And then when you get to this screening stage, it's going to make it so much easier for you to answer some of those questions and prepare for them, because you've already done a little bit of the research. That can feel quite a big task, especially if you're trying to put out lots of applications. But realistically, you should be analysing those applications in a little bit more detail, just to check that it's the right role and the right company, the right industry, the right everything before you put your application in. Totally understand where people will put wildcards in because they just want to get applications out. But ultimately, your prep starts at that point of application. And that's where you should be questioning, is this right for me? You'll find out more information as you go through the process, but that initial analysis is going to be key and will help you with this first stage too, especially because this first stage can sometimes be super fast. Like it can be, like I've seen candidates and clients get a phone call to say, are you available for a screen interview tomorrow? And it's 4:00 on a Monday afternoon. And sometimes it's a fast turnaround. So the more prep you do up front, the easier it's going to be.
And I would go further and say, actually, sometimes you'll effectively have an initial screening without having any notice, because sometimes a recruiter will call you and say, are you free to chat about your application? And they'll frame it that way. But in essence, that's still the same type of conversation. That's still the question of, who are you? You look good on paper. Are you going to make the grade? Are you going to make the cut and be put in front of that hiring manager? So I think you're absolutely right. The preparation is key. And don't, whatever you do, what I had a candidate do once, where she apologized for heavy breathing and told me she was walking the dogs. And I was like, this is still an interview. And that was one with notice. That wasn't me just phoning her while she was on a dog walk. But yeah, I think be prepared, be ready, and anticipate that could be quick and you're way ahead of the game. So if that first stage is about the who are you question, where does the first kind of formal interview tend to sit? What's the purpose of that from a recruiter perspective? And what insight does that give us for how candidates can prepare?
So I suppose the can you do the job phases is mostly covered in that first stage interview. So that might be face to face, that could be on Zoom. Usually that's 30, 45 minutes, maybe even 60 minutes in length. And that is where you will meet the hiring manager. There could be a panel, there could be different people involved in that process. And that first interview, that first formal interview, is really going to focus on verifying your skills and understanding the knowledge and your ability to perform in their role. And at this stage, this is where they're also assessing what might the gaps be in your knowledge and experience. Can we work with this? So the more you can articulate what you can bring and the experience that you've got, that allows them to see where the gaps are and potentially if you could hit the ground running. Now, I don't always like that term of hit the ground running, because it's quite a controversial one, because nobody is going to literally hit the ground running in any job. But from an employer perspective, what they're thinking, and also from a recruiter perspective, it's like, can this person get started in this role? Can they hit that learning curve hard and make sure that they're up to speed within the first 3 to 6 months or something? How capable is this person? And that's where they're going to do that deeper dive into your skills and your capabilities. They might ask some competency questions. They might ask you to give some specific examples of things that you've done and things that you've delivered. And I think it's really important as well at this stage to know from a candidate perspective that the recruiter or the hiring manager, when they're having this conversation, when they're having this interview with you, what they are doing is they're actually starting to compare candidates against each other, and they're looking at, okay, what does this person bring? Is it more than the other person? Is there anything additional? You know, what can we get from this person? And they're always looking for, what value does this person bring? Will we get a great return on investment from this person? Now, if you're listening thinking, oh, that would stop me applying for roles where maybe I've not got all of the experience, nobody is ever going to have all of the experience. But what you can do is you can go in there and you can talk through the experience that you've got and the things that you've delivered with real conviction and confidence. And that will allow them to see what you can do, what you're potentially capable of. And it will allow them to benchmark you against the other candidates. Now, nobody knows how that works. There's no set criteria, marking sheet or anything for it. So you going into that situation, it's about making sure that you can fully articulate what you can deliver and what you have delivered. And some people find that quite difficult to do. So what I would say at this stage is thinking about that first stage interview and how to absolutely nail it is literally go back through the last couple of months of what you've delivered on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people go back to the job description and they're like, okay, so day-to-day, this is what I should be doing. In reality, it's not what you're really doing. And usually that additional stuff is what's going to add the real value and give you the edge in those interviews. So go back over the last couple of months, maybe even go back 6 or 12 months and be really honest and clear with yourself. What have I delivered? What felt good? What would I want to talk about? What would I want to share? Because I guarantee there'll be lots of stuff there that you've forgotten about and lots of stuff that could give you the edge. And a candidate or a client actually said to me yesterday, I haven't really got anything tangible. It's just all of the day-to-day stuff. And but the day-to-day stuff, that's what they're paying you for. So that's what they want to see that you can do for them. So don't be worrying about having to talk about massive achievements, but just being able to clearly articulate what you can do, what you can bring, what you could potentially deliver to them is going to really help.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, that aspect of being benchmarked and compared to other candidates, because I think people know that at this stage they're going to be asked about their skills and they know that there are going to be some competency questions. But that aspect of effectively for recruiters and hiring managers, what they don't want is to have as many people at a later stage or a final stage of recruitment as they are having. So this is about making the cut. So they're maybe going to be narrowing down the field to 2 or 3 people that they might bring back. Sometimes they only bring one person back for a later stage. So this is very much about, can you do the job, and can we start to imagine how you would do the job, how you would approach it. But it's also getting a feel for, where are the gaps? Where are the things that you might not have? And we always say to people, the unicorn candidates do not exist. Nobody at this stage has absolutely everything that they're asking for. So what you can do is really showcase the things that you do have the ability to do. And what you can also do at this stage to set yourself apart is talk about how you approach learning new skills and how you go about that, because that will enable them to recognize your capacity to pick up the things that maybe you have less experience in. So that's your first formal stage. So what about the later stages? So sometimes it's a 2-stage process, and your later stage will be the final stage. Sometimes we hear ridiculous stories of 4 or 5 or even more stages. But for most situations, you've had your first formal stage where you've had your kind of more structured interview, and then this later stage is there or thereabouts the end. So what do people anticipate, and what can they do to prepare at this stage?
So at this stage, I think it's clear that they believe that you could do the job, and that potentially at this stage you can fit in with the team. So we said at the later stages, they're going to be thinking, are you one of us? And they want to know that. So at this stage, they've took you through. So this could be the second or the third or the fourth interview. One of my clients had 7 interviews. It just depends on the company, but all of the later stages are the getting to know you interviews, and will you fit in? And there'll be less candidates, and there'll be more questions and more specific questions around your ability to fit in, to do the job. They might ask you about how you deal with certain types of people, how you like to be managed, and all of those kinds of things, because they're really starting to think about team fit and dynamics. So they're like, from a skill perspective, we think we've hit the money with this person, but will they fit in with the team? Will they gel with the team? And in a team, there's so many different personalities usually, and different ways of working and all the rest of it. So it's like, how will this person fit in? So they might ask you a few things around team dynamics and how you might fit in. They might even ask you to do a presentation in some of the later stages. And this is something that we do recommend when we work with clients on their recruitment processes, that they include a presentation, because for me, the presentation is never about what the person actually presents. It's always about how the person presents. Now, without taking that too literally, because sometimes in sales and marketing interviews, they want a plan. They want to see your logic. But ultimately, what they also want to see is how you present, how you come across, how you deal with pressure, how you deal with questions on the spot based on the work that you've done, and just generally how you conduct yourself in that situation. Because sometimes you might be responsible for speaking to third parties or creating partnerships and all of that kind of stuff. So they also want to see, how will you come across to our suppliers or our partners? So that's something else to think about as well. So I would always, I'm probably an interview weirdo is what I'd probably call myself, because I absolutely love interviewing. Like, that's one of the things that I always enjoyed, because I saw it as a real challenge to be able to get my point across, show them what I'm made of, and show them what ultimately I can bring to the table. But I know for most people, interviewing fills them with absolute dread, and it's like the worst possible thing. But if you reframe that and think, this is an opportunity for me to show what I can bring, what I could deliver, and let them get a real feel for you, then that'll make that process so much easier. And of course, you're going to be nervous, because if you're not, then why are you even there? Because it's always going to be some element of nerves. But rather than going in thinking, oh my goodness, will they like me? I think in these later stages, we know that they like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. So it's more about you taking the opportunity to really show them what you can bring, and no, in my opinion, no interview is ever wasted time, because you'll always learn something about yourself, something about how you can do better in the future or do more of what's gone in future interviews. So I would always approach it with as much confidence as you can. And also go in with that real view that, they think I'm one of them. They think I am, because if they didn't, I wouldn't be in this situation, and guarantee that if they didn't think that, you wouldn't be there. So it's almost like, at what point do you suddenly go in this process, they do actually like me, they keep inviting me back, and they think that I might fit in with their team. And it's almost give yourself that pat on the back. You've done the hard work. Now it's just letting them see a little bit more of you and allowing them to get to know you on a deeper level as well.
I think it's a really interesting mindset shift when people recognize that these stages are not about catching them out. They are about sense checking that finer detail of, are you one of us? How do you come across? And I think what you've just shared there around going in with that confidence is so crucial, because as much as the actual task or presentation or some of the questions might feel challenging, like you say, you've got to take confidence from the fact that never, ever in my entire career of recruiting people have I ever brought someone in for a later stage where they were not a really strong candidate. Because you just, as a hiring manager, recruitment is time intensive. You've got to believe that person has the capacity and could well be the right person for you to invest that time and energy in bringing them back for that stage. So I think that mindset shift can be huge when people recognize that, okay, this is not about catching me out. This is, they already have that sense of that I could be the right person. And this is now my opportunity to shine and to really showcase. And for anyone that is asked to do a presentation, we have got a whole separate episode that is all about how to nail your presentation. So we've not gone into the mechanics of that, but that episode is one of our most popular episodes. And it's very often the one that we hear people come back afterwards and say, I used all your tips and I got the job. So between this episode and that one, we're setting you up for success. Is there anything else then people can anticipate as part of a recruitment process, or that they need to be aware of? Because sometimes there are quirks. You might, for example, be asked to come and meet the team that will be reporting to you. You might have to spend time with your peers. So are there tips or advice that you can share when people are in those kinds of situations that are less common, but can be pivotal?
Yeah, so just as you said that, then I was just thinking about the one where they ask you to go and meet the team, and it can feel super awkward. One of my clients was in that situation a couple of weeks back, and she was actually not going to go to the interview. She was going to turn it down because she was like, they've said that I'm the favourite candidate at this stage, but now they want me to go in and meet the team, and I'm not sure that I actually want to do that. After some kind of discussion around it, she decided that, yes, she would go in and meet the team. She went in and met the team. She had the offer the next morning, and she said it was really nice, actually. She got to have a chat with them, but her biggest concern about going in to meet the team was like going in and the whole team's there and she's stood there and everyone's looking at her, and this is our potential new person. What does everyone think? And she was very, why do they need to do that? Surely the hiring manager can make the decision. But actually what they said is, we love the way you came in, you were very open, and the team absolutely loved meeting you, and they were able to build rapport with you straight away. Now, this is not somebody who's completely or extrovert in any way, shape or form. This is not just for the extroverts to go in and become center of attention. It's just like we've said in previous podcasts, you'd be interested about people, go in and ask them questions. So what we did before that was just come up with some questions that she could go in and potentially ask the people that she met if they didn't start the conversation off. So she went in with 3 or 4 questions that she could ask different people to get the conversation flowing. She actually didn't need to do that because the conversation flowed really nicely and she seemed to click with them straight away. But if you go into those situations prepared, that really helps. And then also as well, just thinking about that mindset reframe, because I think that is super important in the interview process, because if you go through that entire process thinking, I don't think they like me, I don't think I'm right for them, I don't think it's right for me, what you can do is just cause yourself lots of unnecessary stress and pressure. So it's about going through each stage and taking it for what it is and learning from it. And what I always say to all of my clients is that after every single interview stage, just take 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, and just do a brain dump on what happened, how you felt, what made you feel awkward, what did you think you answered well? What did you struggle to answer? So that as the stages progress, you can get better on those things. And we know that interviewers don't always give feedback, and we usually say don't ask for it. So by taking that 5 or 10 minutes after each stage to reflect on it, your gut will usually tell you what's gone or what hasn't gone so well. So just by jotting it down, you can make sure that if you ever get asked those questions in a future interview, whether it's with that company or a different company, that you can then start thinking about your answer. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll lock it away, you'll forget about it, you'll get asked it again in a future interview and you'll go, oh my goodness, still got no answer for that. And it's double the panic because you should have thought about it last time. So just take that 5 or 10 minutes, even if it feels painful, even if the interview wasn't particularly comfortable, like anything where you feel uncomfortable, you want to lean into it more, because that's where you're going to get better, you're going to improve, and you are going to be able to provide better answers next time.
It's a really interesting one at final stage, because that type of situation is not unusual, where someone's a bit freaked out of, or either I've got to meet the team or I've got to meet the CEO. And it can feel as if, because it's a final stage, it can feel as if those people are the ones making the decision. And in reality, what that is very often about, having a stage where you either meet the team or meet somebody very senior, is often about the decision in principle has already been made. And the reason that they're asking for that is to get the sign off, to get the buy-in from that person or those people, so that those people feel like they've been included and feel like they've been a part. And it's often a sign of a culture within an organization where the value is not on hierarchy. And so I think often the organizations that do get you to do some of those things, you can often find that there is quite a nice culture in those organizations where there is a desire for people to buy into decisions and where people's views are considered and where it's important that people feel included. So I always see those ones as a really positive thing, but I get that if you've not been asked to do it before, then it might freak you out a little bit. So hopefully that has put your mind at rest. So we have covered quite a lot, I feel, in today's episode. So having not covered this in our previous 100 and whatever episodes, we've now gone into some depth. So I hope if you are at that stage as a candidate of going into a job search process or wondering what you might need to anticipate, then this has been helpful. Please do share it with anyone else that you know who is in job search mode so that they can also benefit. And we will link back to that interview presentation episode in the show notes as well. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back again next week with another episode. Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.